Before I get started with this commentary, let me give a shout out to Craig J for sending it to me. And this story is coming out of Tennessee, where you have this man by the name of Brian Beck, who I immediately thought was Seth MacFarlane. If you don't know who Seth MacFarlane is, he is the creator of Family Guy and that movie Ted. That's pretty much what he's pretty much known for, especially Family Guy. But this guy right here, he violated a 14-year-old girl, and a judge, yet another judge, allowed him to not only avoid prison time, but also he doesn't have to register as a sex offender. At this point, these freaks are both the ones who commit the act and the ones who allow the freak to get off. The judge and this person, as far as I can tell, are one and the same. They are opposite sides of the same freakishly perverted coin. How many times have I done stories on this channel where people like him, and even the women, have gotten off for committing these kinds of acts, and it's because the judge allowed it to happen? Now, I'm curious to see what kind of excuse the judge allowed this person to have in order for them to get off for this crime. After striking a plea deal with prosecutors, a one-time Tennessee sheriff's deputy who was accused of repeatedly raping a 14-year-old girl over a period of 20 months, which is roughly almost 2 years, will serve no time in prison and does not have to register as a sex offender. Brian O. Beck, age 47, pled guilty to a single count of aggravated assault on Monday, according to court records found in Shelby County Court. That plea was part of a deal between Beck and prosecutors, a member of the Shelby County District Attorney General's office confirmed to Law and Crime. The judge in the case suspended Beck's nominal 4-year prison sentence and said the defendant would instead serve 3 years probation. A sentencing order provided to Law and Crime by the prosecutor's office indicates if Beck fails to live up to the terms of his probation, he could be incarcerated for the aforementioned 4-year term. First of all, the original sentence he would have gotten of 4 years wasn't even enough time. So this man was going to get a slap on the wrist regardless. According to the probation order itself and a statement from the prosecutor's office to a local television station, the order also requires Beck to serve 150 hours of community service, submit to a random drug screening, and have no contact with the victim. And you want to know what's so crazy? Because he doesn't have to register as a sex offender, the only child or minor that he cannot be around is the one in which he committed the crime against. That means he can be around other minors. That's some scary-ish when you put it in context. The judge's order, in essence of a perfunctory document, form document with boxes to check and a few blank lines to fill, offers but a glimpse into the reasoning behind the moves. The document says the defendant is not likely again to engage in a criminal course of conduct. How do you know that? This guy was messing with a 14-year-old girl for almost 2 years. While granted that was the only child he messed with, who's to say he won't mess with another child since he knows he cannot go around that child? And who's to say that over the course of 20 months, that means he's had a lust for doing this? That's a long time. Who's to say he won't risk his probation to try to do it again? And he scarred this girl for life. Like, see, the thing is, when it comes to stuff like this is the kind of stuff Me Too, if they had a conscience, would hop on. This is the kind of freaks and pervs they should be going after. But then again, what did creative phrase Crunch Bar say, aka Tawana Burke? It's not my job to go after white men. There you go. It leads to the satisfaction of the court in that the ends of justice and the welfare of society do not require that the defendant shall presently suffer the penalty imposed by law by incarceration. Judge Lee Coffey signed off on the document. Beck will also not have to register as a sex offender. The Shelby County Court's office relieved Beck of duty without pay in June 2018, according to a press release from the Shelby County's DA's office at the time. The document further said that Beck, then 43, had been on the sheriff's force since 2004. The victim was just 14 when the authorities alleged she was sexually assaulted for the first time, and the press release added, the age of consent is 18 in Tennessee. Beck's arrest came one day after a grand jury indicted him on 2 counts of rape by force or coercion and 2 counts of sexual battery by an authority figure. Now look at what he got eventually hit with: rape and this by force and coercion and 2 counts of sexual battery wasn't even on there when he got the probation. So they literally took out the major felonies that was attached to him and gave him what looks to me almost like the equivalent of a misdemeanor. It says Beck would have been facing up to 90 years in prison had he been convicted of the 4 counts contained in an original grand jury. So imagine that he went from heavy felonious crimes charges down to what could be chalked up to as a misdemeanor. He went from 90 years at the max to doing 3 years probation. And they try to tell us that white privilege is not real. They can miss me with that. Oh, and listen to this. Beck's bail was initially set at $125,000, but lowered a few days later to $90,000. Court records show Beck posted bail for the lesser amount. Then there was nothing. Every hearing and trial date on the public court docket from the day of Beck's release on bail to the day he entered his guilty plea on Monday was reset. Last June, the victim's family decided to voice their frustration. "It's 5 years," said the victim's fathers in an interview with the Memphis NBC affiliate WMC with reference to the start date of the alleged abuse. "I mean, she needs closure." The television station said it agreed not to name the father so as not to identify the victim. But at the time, the family had been waiting approximately 3 years for a trial since the date the defendant was charged. Imagine you as a parent who does everything you can to protect your child, and this happens only to be sitting idly by waiting for this person to go on trial, and this is the outcome of it. You waited all that time for something that they did for almost 2 years, and these are the results that you get hit with. At this point, the father would have to pull a Liam Neeson from Taken. At that point, what else could you do? I mean, there are damages, major damages and unhappiness, said the father of the victim. She just needs some closure. She just needs to see the movement of the ball. That's what she needs to see. The father's frustration hit the airwaves along with complaints from Leslie Ballin, Beck's attorney, about a backlog of cases due to the novel pandemic. The general thesis of the report was that the Sixth Amendment right to a speedy trial was under siege due to the pandemic, but the DA proffered that cases would soon be resuming in the local halls of justice. The Sixth Amendment right to a speedy trial is held by defendants, not victims, under the plain terms of the U.S. Constitution. The accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy trial and public trial. Ballin did not respond to a law and crime request for comment about the case, and it is unclear from the available court docket whether the speedy trial concerns referenced in the television story played a role in the trajectory of Beck's case. The DA's office did not comment on why prosecutors agreed to a plea deal. A spokesperson will only tell Law and Crime that the defendant's guilty plea to a felony will stay on his record, no diversion. He can no longer own a gun or be employed by law enforcement. That's lightweight compared to what else he shouldn't be able to do. According to a state website, Tennessee law enforcement officers must submit to rigorous criminal background checks. Prosecutors filed a nolle prosequi, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, or a decision to drop one of the counts of rape and both counts of sexual battery. According to court records, it appears that prosecutors switched the other rape count to a count of aggravated assault, the latter of which being the count to which the defendant pled guilty. Under the Tennessee rules of criminal procedure, a prosecutor can drop or add charges to a grand jury indictment if a defendant agrees with the decision. The rules say a prosecutor can also amend an indictment without a defendant's permission prior to the point at which jeopardy attaches if no substantial right to the defendant is prejudiced. Jeopardy generally attaches when a jury is sworn. Here, no substantial right of the defendant would be prejudiced because the amendment resulted in a more serious charge being replaced with a significantly lesser charge. Beck would have been facing up to 90 years in prison had he been convicted of the 4 counts upon which he was initially indicted by the grand jury. And that's the whole article right there. Listen, they cannot tell any of us that white privilege is not a thing when you have something like this going on. When this is the outcome, this guy was a deputy sheriff since 2004 and decided that he was going to let his urges get the best of him and repeatedly raped this 14-year-old girl for the span of almost 2 years. Her family had to wait 3 years for a trial to finally happen. And then when the outcome of the trial happens, well, that he gets charged with the stuff he should be charged with, something that could have sent him to jail, at least most likely for the rest of his life, up to 90 years. If he got the max, he was going to die in prison. And all of that gets lowered down to probation of 3 years. And he doesn't have to register as a sex offender, which again means he can be around other minors. I hope that people get a good look at his face who have kids. Because if you ever see this individual coming around your child, and y'all got to be real good, because he might try to switch his look up. I don't know if this is how he currently looks or not, but if it is, he might try to grow some facial hair. He might, I don't know, lose some weight. I don't know. And they're going to keep, they probably going to try to keep this story as hush hush as they possibly can to keep his identity as down low as they possibly can. Although, if you live in Tennessee, they need to have his face plastered up everywhere. I don't care if he isn't registered as a sex offender. But that part right there means he still has access to minors. And that's the scary part. That's the worrisome part about this whole situation. He just can't be around her. He can't be anywhere near her. It didn't say he couldn't be anywhere near any other kids. But like I said, he has a urge to do this. Anyone who could do something like this over the span of 20 months, they say it takes 21 days to develop or break a habit. I don't know, but I'm not the best mathematician in the world, but 20 months definitely sounds a lot more than 21 days. But again, that judge is the one who let him walk. These judges, I don't know how they be getting in there. I don't know if they get elected in or they get sworn in. But they need to get that judge up out of there for all the Tennessee residents or those who live in that county. If that judge was voted in, they need to find a way to get that person off the bench, and they need to be brought up on charges for allowing this freak to walk. Literally just walk. Probation, what is that? All they got to do is abide by it for 3 years and it's done. And part of their probation is they can't be around that person, which means, let's just say in 3 years, their stuff is done. Everything that's part of their probation, including not being around the person that they did this to, is gone, which means if they wanted to seek them out, they could. And what's to stop them from doing it for the next 3 years, after 3 years have passed? Nothing. Like I said, I hear so many stories. I come across, or people send me so many stories like this. It's a repeated pattern. It's ridiculous. Y'all let me know what you think about this story down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe if you are new. Make sure you go ahead and hit that bell to be notified every time I upload a new video or go live.